There's a paradox most people never notice. In every confrontation, the most dangerous person isn't the loudest, the strongest, or the most aggressive. It's the one who stays calm. History has proven this again and again. And no one understood this truth more deeply than Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest swordsman in Japanese history. A man who won over duels to the death, not because he was stronger, but because he mastered a system of emotional control far ahead of his time. Most people, when confronted, instantly become the worst version of themselves. All it takes is someone yelling, questioning their worth, or challenging their pride. And the body immediately floods with stress hormones. Heart rate spikes, breathing breaks, the mind tightens. From that moment on, they're no longer directing their own actions. They're simply being dragged around by their emotions like a leaf in a storm. Musashi saw this clearly. He realized that the loser in any confrontation is always the one controlled by emotion, while the victor always the one who stays centered. And here's the unsettling truth. The calm person does make noise. They don't tremble. They don't react right away. They observe. They analyze. They choose their moment. They act only when necessary. And when they do, they don't miss. That's why Musashi created a four-principle system that allowed him to stay centered under extreme pressure. A system that works just as powerfully today, whether the confrontation's a heated meeting, a family argument, a negotiation, or encounter with someone trying to provoke you. Because as Musashi famously said, a warrior wins the battle before drawing his sword. Victory comes from the mind, not from shouting, not from impulsive reactions, not from egos. And if you look honestly at modern life, you see why Musashi's teachings matter now more than ever. We face more conflict today than people did centuries ago. A single comment online can turn into a fight. A misunderstood message becomes days of silent tension. A wrong look triggers irritation. A careless word can fracture a relationship. We think we're living in the most civilized era, yet people react faster, with less control, and with more emotional volatility than ever before. In this environment, the person who remains calm holds the ultimate advantage. Not to dominate others, but to avoid getting pulled into battles that don't matter. Musashi didn't just teach how to fight, he taught how to master oneself. His system rests on four timeless principles: emotional distance, step out of the storm within; anticipatory awareness, see what's coming before it arrives; strategic breathing, use control the nervous system; purposeful action, from intention, not emotion. These aren't just combat tactics. They are a psychological framework at the intersection of samurai discipline, Zen philosophy, and modern neuroscience. Applied to daily life, help you stay calm under insult, stay clear under criticism, stay wise when others lose control, and most importantly, engage only in the confrontations that truly matter. A calm person sees things others don't. Timing, intention, hidden motives, patterns beneath the chows. An emotional person sees only their own reactions. In the next section, we'll break down the first and most foundational principle: emotional distance, the ability to step outside the storm and observe your emotions instead of becoming them. But before we continue, if you want to build an inner warrior, the kind of person who stays unshaken in any confrontation, make sure to subscribe to Life Philosophy, turn on notifications, and comment below, "I choose to master my emotions." Let's continue the journey. Part 1: Emotional distance. In every confrontation, defeat begins the moment a person loses the boundary between me and my emotions. When someone insults you, challenges you, or pushes you into a defensive position, the primitive brain reacts instantly. The heart races, the breath shortens, the muscles tighten, and the mind narrows as if pulled into a vice. And in that exact moment, most people fall into the trap Musashi saw centuries ago. They become their anger. When you become your emotions, you no longer control yourself. You're simply being dragged by an inner storm you don't understand. Musashi considered this the most dangerous weakness in any confrontation, whether it was a duel to the death or a heated argument between two ordinary people. He described true calmness as the ability to stand above the storm, watching clouds drift by without jumping into them. Others might yell, panic, or react impulsively, but he maintained a quiet separation between what was happening and what he was feeling. That invisible space gave him overwhelming advantage. Think back to the last time you were angry. You weren't thinking clearly. Something inside you pushed you to attack, defend, or lash out. But none of that came from a conscious choice. It came from emotion hijacking your mind. Musashi called this the fire that burns the one who holds it. His opponents fell exactly into that fire. They entered battle tense, pressured, and emotionally provoked. They were insulting. They were challenged. They lost control. A swordsman with great skill but a chaotic mind always loses to some with steady focus. The difference isn't in the blade, it's in emotional distance. In his legendary duel with Sasaki Kojiro, this truth became undeniable. Kojiro stepped into the fight burning with rage. Musashi deliberately arrived late, not out of arrogance but to expose Kojiro's greatest flaw, the inability to stay calm. The angrier Kojiro became, the more clouded his judgment grew. A chaotic mind is already defeated before the sword is drawn. Musashi didn't win because of superior technique alone. He won because he remained completely separate from the emotional storm. Emotional distance doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending not to care. It simply means stepping one pace back internally, creating a mental gap between you and the emotion rising inside you. Instead of saying I'm angry, you say, I notice I'm feeling anger. That one small shift pulls you out of the storm. When you are your anger, you control nothing. When you observe your anger, you regain control of everything. Modern science supports this ancient wisdom. Labeling emotions. I notice tension coming up. Activates the brain's rational center, the prefrontal cortex, and calms the emotional center, the amygdala. Therapists use exact method today to help people overcome panic and overwhelm. What Musashi instinctively mastered in life or death combat is now proven through neuroscience. But emotional distance doesn't appear by accident. It must be trained, slowly repeated deliberately. Musashi didn't practice this in meditation rooms. He practiced it in real danger. He entered confrontations with a mind like still water, observing, noticing, but not reacting. Each time he faced pressure, he didn't try to kill the emotion. He simply watched it, and because he watched it, it couldn't consume him. In modern life, you don't need a sword to practice this. Start with the smallest conflicts. When someone talks down to you, criticizes you, leaves a rude comment, or throws a passive-aggressive remark, instead of firing back, create a tiny gap in your mind by saying, I notice this emotion rising. Instantly, you lift yourself out of the center of the storm. That gap, no matter how small, is where inner strength begins. As that space grows, something remarkable happens. Many confrontations vanish on their own. They only existed because you reacted. When you don't react, they lose their power. People no longer control your mood. No one can drag you into a fight you didn't choose. In an age where everyone reacts too fast, too strongly, and too emotionally, the person who maintains emotional distance becomes the calmest, and therefore the most powerful, person in the room. Emotional distance is not just self-defense. It is foundation of Musashi's entire system. Without mastering it, you cannot move to the next principle. Anticipatory awareness. The ability to see what's coming before it happens. Part I. Anticipatory awareness. If emotional distance is the ability to step out of the storm, then anticipatory awareness is the art of seeing the storm before it forms. Most people only react when something already hits them. The skilled ones prepare before the hit arrives, but the truly exceptional see the direction of events long before they materialize. Musashi belonged to that third group. He called this ability foreknowledge, knowledge that arrives before the situation does. Not a mystical power, not vague intuition, not mind reading. It is simply understanding human bigger patterns. Musashi observed something most people overlook. Human beings react in predictable ways. When angry, they follow similar routes. When threatened, their choices narrow into a few obvious responses. When afraid, they retreat. When pride is touched, they attack. When confused, they speak too quickly and say the wrong things. He spent his life studying these patterns, not only through sword fights but through how people walked, spoke, breathed, and responded to pressure. A warrior who understands people is far more dangerous than a warrior who only understands weapons. In today's language, this is the mindset of a chess master. They don't guess the next move. They recognize patterns. They know that if an opponent is in a certain emotional state, there are only a few optimal moves they can make. Once you identify the pattern, you control the board. Everyday confrontations work the same way. A person who always criticizes will likely criticize again when challenged. A conflict-avoidant friend will avoid confrontation the moment emotions rise. A prideful coworker will respond defensively to even gentle feedback. You don't need to read minds. You simply need to notice their repeating behaviors. Musashi elevated this into a strategic art. Before his most dangerous duels, he would study his opponents carefully. He would examine what they relied on to win, what caused them trouble, where their strength peaked, and where their weaknesses exposed themselves under pressure. But most importantly, what would they do the moment stress hit its highest point? Before fighting Sasaki Kojiro, famous for wielding an extraordinarily long nodachi, Musashi crafted a wooden sword slightly longer, just a few extra inches. But those inches shifted the entire outcome of the duel. Kojiro relied on power and intimidation. Musashi relied on understanding habit and distance. By seeing what would happen, Musashi won before the battle even began. In modern life, this ability is what keeps you calm while others lose control. When you know your boss tends to explode, you're not shocked when it happens. When you recognize your partner fears confrontation, you aren't surprised when they withdraw. When you sense a friend isn't angry but actually hurt, you won't respond with more anger. Awareness before impact is a shield against emotional reactivity. Musashi didn't just explain this. He offered a practical training method. Before any difficult conversation, take seconds to ask yourself 3 questions. What emotional state is this person likely in? Fear, insecurity. Emotion predicts by myth and trem of the next move. What do they actually want from this interaction, not their words, the deeper need? Respect, validation, relief, control, safety. What are the 3 most likely reactions they might have? If you can guess ahead, you won't be surprised. If you're not surprised, you won't overact. If you don't overact, you remain in control. This is why the world's best negotiators, from FBI hostage teams to high-level corporate dealmakers, prioritize profiling before speaking a single word. When they understand another person's patterns, they're never shaken when that person explodes, resists unreasonable demands. They saw it coming. Anticipatory awareness transforms a chaotic confrontation into a predictable landscape. When you know what's likely happen, your mind doesn't feel attacked by surprise. You stand steady while everyone else wavers. This is the second pillar of Musashi's system. Don't wait for the storm to hit. Notice the wind changing before anyone else realizes, because the person who knows just a little earlier will always stay calmer than the one who realizes too late. Part strategic breathing. In Musashi's system, there is one principle that sounds simple but governs the entire ability to remain calm. The breath. To Musashi, breathing wasn't just air moving in and out of the lungs. It was the direct connection between the mind and the body, between emotional states and the quality of one's actions. A person who loses control always loses their breath first. And a person who regains their breath always regains their mind. Musashi observed something crucial. When people feel fear, anger, or emotional pressure, the breath is the very first thing to change. It becomes shallow, quick, uneven, like the body preparing for a life or death struggle. But here's the remarkable part. The breath can also change the motion. When you control how you breathe, you control your nervous system. When you control your nervous system, your mind returns to clarity. That's why Musashi dedicated an entire part of his training to breath work. He called it the pulse of calmness, the warrior's drum. He understood that the breath is the bridge between mind and body, and the one who masters the breath can master both. During combat, he taught his students to watch an opponent's breathing to know exactly what they felt. Fear, tension, or a decision to attack. A broken rhythm was a sign of imbalance. An imbalance was opportunity. But even more importantly, Musashi used breathing to keep himself in a state of stillness in the middle of danger. Before decisive moments in battle, he always used a specific breathing pattern. Inhale for bone counts through the nose, hold very lightly, then exhale for cell counts through the mouth. He didn't need many repetitions. One conscious cycle was enough to bring his mind back to its center. Today, neuroscience explains exactly what Musashi discovered centuries ago. Fast, shallow breath. Activate the sympathetic nervous system. Fight or flight, panic, instinctive reactions. Slow, deep breaths. Activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Calmness, clarity, control. When we breathe, we're not just moving air, we're sending a signal to the entire nervous system. There is no danger. Stay steady. And when the body believes there's no danger, the mind immediately becomes sharper. In modern life, there are countless confrontations you can't avoid. A tense meeting, a harsh message, a frustrated family member, a coworker blaming you, a customer pressuring you, an argument with someone you love. Every one of these situations shifts your breath instantly. You may not notice it, but your body does. That's why the first thing you should do to confrontation is not speak, not defend yourself, not explain, but simply take a deliberate breath. One born, slow breath cycle can change everything. It brings light into a mind going dark. It pulls you out of instinct and into intention. It lowers your heart rate and reduces adrenaline. It opens your awareness instead of narrowing it. It allows you to hear, not the truth beneath the words. A person who is emotionally charged hears only their ego. A person who breathes correctly hears all sides. Themselves, the other person, the situation, and the true objective. Musashi used breathing as a strategic weapon, not to attack but to remain unshakable. When the breath is steady, the mind is steady. When the mind is steady, every action becomes precise. Imagine a heated argument. The other person is loud, aggressive, flooding the room with tension. Your instincts want to fire back. But the moment you inhale for 4 counts and exhale for 6, the entire dynamic shifts. You no longer speak from reactivity. You speak from control. Breath is the brake of the mind. A small brake, yes, but one capable of stopping an entire vehicle from plunging off a cliff. Few people in the modern world know how to use that brake. That's why they spiral into conflicts that never needed to happen, say things they later regret, and do things they must apologize for, not because they're weak, but because they don't know how to pause. Musashi understood that the one who can pause for even a single breath can see what others cannot see. A single intentional breath can open entire inner sky. Strategic breathing isn't just about the breath. It is the gateway to inner stillness, the foundation upon which the remaining principles operate. Because if the breath is chaotic, the mind is chaotic, and if the mind is chaotic, all strategies collapse. Once Musashi mastered the breath, he moved on to the final principle in his confrontation system, purposeful action. Acting from intention, not emotion, and that is where we will go next. Part 1. Purposeful action. Acting from purpose, not from emotion. After creating emotional distance, anticipating what's coming, and using breath to steady the mind, Musashi arrived at the final principle. Your actions must serve your purpose, not your emotions. This is where most people fail, not because they are weak, but because they let emotions take the lead while their true goals fall behind. In every confrontation, 2 battles occur at the same time. The external battle with the other person, and the internal battle with your own emotions. And the irony is this. Most people lose not because the opponent is stronger, but because they lose the second battle, the internal one they never learned to control. Emotions always demand immediate reaction. They push you to speak quickly, defend yourself instantly, strike back instantly, prove something instantly. But Musashi realized that actions born from emotion are never sharp, never strategic. They are reflexes, not decisions. A person who acts from purpose, however, remains in control. In the Book of 5 Rings, Musashi emphasized that a warrior should not strike first just because their feelings urge them to. The warrior acts only with a clear understanding of the ultimate objective, and every movement, even the smallest step, must serve that objective. This is true in combat, and even more true in everyday life. Think of an argument you once had. It probably started with something small, a comment, a misunderstanding, a complaint. But within minutes, the conversation spiraled away from the original issue and turned into chows, bringing up old wounds, personal attacks, and words no one can take back. Why? Because no one remembers the original purpose anymore. Musashi called this losing to emotional momentum. He countered it with a technique as simple as it is powerful. Before entering any stressful situation, define your purpose in a single sentence. Just one sentence, but one that answers the question, what outcome actually serves my long-term path? If your purpose is to improve the relationship, you won't choose words that cause permanent scars. If your purpose is to stay calm, you won't dive into a pointless fight. If your purpose is to solve the problem, you won't let ego dictate your tone. If your purpose is success at work, you won't let a moment of irritation ruin an opportunity. A clear purpose acts like a mental anchor. When emotions start pulling you off balance, quietly repeating that purpose brings you back to center, emotion loses power. Clarity returns. Musashi applied this in every duel. He never fought to prove he was strong. He never fought because he felt offended. He never fought to satisfy pride. Every movement served a single objective, to survive and continue perfecting the way of the warrior. When an action aligns with purpose, it becomes sharp like a blade slicing through air. When action aligns with emotion, it becomes a swing in the dark. Today, purposeful action is the skill that carries you through modern challenges more complex than any battlefield. In work, it keeps you focused on results instead of drama. In relationships, it keeps you from letting conflicts become scars. In business, it helps you see beyond temporary emotion and choose strategically. In life, it builds an inner strength that no one can manipulate. Here is the truth. Those who act from purpose never rush. They observe. They wait for the right moment. They strike only when victory is certain. Purposeful action is not slowness nor hesitation. It is deliberate. Action born from stillness, not impulse. When you act this way, your mind becomes like a still lake, reflecting everything clearly without distortion. A confrontation guided by purposeful action is softer, cleaner, and far more effective. You don't just reduce conflict, you elevate yourself. The first 3 principles bring you into calmness. This principle transforms calmness into results. And when the 4 principles combine, you begin to see what Musashi saw throughout his life. True strength does not come from the sword. It comes from the mind that holds it. In the next section, we will explore the deeper philosophical layer beneath Musashi's system, how these principles connect to Buddhist non-attachment and Taoist Wu-Wei, the root of all inner calm. Part 1. The deep Buddhist non-attachment Taoist Wu-Wei. When Musashi created his four-principle system for staying calm in any confrontation, he wasn't just offering techniques. The reason his system has survived for centuries is not because it worked in battle, but because it reaches into the roots of the human mind, aligning perfectly with Buddhist non-attachment and Taoist Wu-Wei. Every principle Musashi taught corresponds to a deeper layer of ancient wisdom, guiding not only how to win a fight, but how to win over oneself. Emotional distance is the first step toward non-attachment. In Buddhism, non-attachment means not letting emotions, thoughts, memories, or ego possess you. When you say, "I notice I'm feeling angry," you step out of identification with the emotion. You are no longer the anger, you are the observer of anger. That is the heart of non-attachment, seeing without clinging, knowing without being pulled in. Musashi never used Buddhist terminology, but he lived this principle every time he entered a duel. Anticipatory awareness is the second layer, the ability to see beyond the narrowness of the present moment. Buddhism calls understanding dependent origination. Every reaction has a cause. Every word rests on a deeper wound. Every behavior is the product of many conditions. When you understand this, you stop taking others' reactions personally. You see that people respond from their insecurities, fears, and old patterns. This insight naturally creates calmness. Musashi understood this intuitively, not philosophically. Strategic breathing is the gateway to what Zen calls deep presence. In meditation, the breath is the anchor that brings the mind home. When the breath is deep and steady, the mind becomes clear like a still lake. When the breath is chaotic, the mind becomes stormy. Musashi used breathing to pull himself out of fear and anger, returning to a pure state of awareness. This is the essence of Zen's one-pointed mind. When the breath is right, the mind is right. But the true jewel of Musashi's system lies in the fourth principle, purposeful action. This is where Musashi's system meets Tume's most profound idea. Wu-Wei. Many misunderstand Wu-Wei as doing nothing, but its real meaning is acting in perfect alignment with nature, without force, without struggle, without ego, enacting from a higher purpose, not from temporary emotions. Musashi never fought to prove he was strong. He never fought out of offense. He never fought to satisfy pride. He fought according to his way, his higher purpose of survival, refinement, and mastery. A person who acts from this place cannot be thrown off balance, because they carry nothing unnecessary. Taoism describes Wu-Wei beautifully as doing without overdoing, winning without needless struggle. Musashi embodied this perfectly. When the mind is free of emotional noise, every action becomes light, precise, and almost effortless. Not because there is no effort, but because effort is not distorted by ego. And here is the brilliance. Musashi's system applies not only on the battlefield, but in modern life. When you don't cling to insults, you stay at peace. When you understand others' reaction come from their wounds, you don't feel attacked. When you breathe correctly, you don't drown in sudden emotions. When you act from purpose, you don't waste energy on meaningless battles. Musashi shows us that the true victor is not the one who wins every confrontation, but the one who chooses only the confrontations that matter. And when they do engage, they enter with a completely different posture, not fearful, not reactive, not prideful, not insecure, but focused, steady, and clear-sighted. This is strength that cannot be shaken. Modern society makes people cling to everything. To praise, to criticism, to ego, to the need to win every small argument. We live in an age where people fight over the smallest things, and in doing so, lose the greatest strength of all, the ability to remain unprovoked. Through the path of the sword, Musashi reached what Buddhism and Taoism taught thousands of years ago. When the mind is unattached, the person is unshakable. And an unshakable person cannot be defeated by life. The four principles are not merely defensive tools. They are a path back to one's true self. In the next part, we will explore why, in an age of constant conflict and emotional volatility, Musashi's system is not only useful, but one of the greatest advantages a person can possess. Part Sao, an age of conflict. The art of staying calm in a world designed to provoke you. Musashi lived in an era of life and death duels, yet the paradox of this, today's humans, despite not carrying swords, encounter far more confrontations than he ever did. Open your phone and conflict appears instantly. Social media arguments, negative comments, workplace tension, family pressure, financial stress, or to succeed, the pressure to always be right. There may be no blade against your skin, but there are thousands of invisible knives pressing into your mind. And the worst part, we wrecked too quickly, too sensibly provoked. A single comment on Facebook can ruin your whole day. A coworker's cold expression can make you think they're against you. A mild criticism can trigger the urge to defend yourself, to attack back, to prove you're right. We live in a time where emotion erupts faster than thought, and conflict erupts faster than clarity. Musashi did need modern psychology to understand this. He knew human nature hasn't changed. When the mind is agitated, perception becomes blurry. When perception is blurry, actions become reckless. When actions are reckless, life drifts off course. And because life today moves at such speed, Musashi's 4 principles have become times more important. Emotional distance, anticipatory awareness, strategic breathing, purposeful action. They are not just tools for confrontation. They are tools for psychological survival. We live in the era of instant reaction. A message comes in. You reply immediately. A criticism appears. A difficult moment rises. A small disagreement. You explode. Everything happens too fast for us to pause and ask the essential question, what is controlling my mind right now? Musashi called this the trap of instant reactivity, where emotions outrun purpose and instinct outruns intelligence. In a society full of stimulation, the calm person is no longer ordinary. They are rare, and because they are rare, they are the strongest person in the room. Observe closely. In a tense meeting, the person who sits quietly, speaks slowly, and refuses to be dragged into useless debates is the one others respect most. In family arguments, the person who controls their tone, speaks little but speaks truth, becomes the one others trust. In business, the person who does react impulsively to the market is the one who survives longest. On social media, the person who does respond to every insult is the one who maintains inner freedom. And all of that comes from Musashi's core teaching. The calm person is not weak. They are the person no one can control. Today's world wants you reactive. It wants you angry. It wants you arguing. It wants you trapped in emotional spiral. So you lose focus, lose energy, lose stability. Social media algorithms know humans are more easily provoked than inspired, so they reward conflict, outrage, and division. If you lack Musashi's inner wall, you get pulled into that vortex. Musashi never lived in the digital age, but his philosophy is the antidote to it. Distance keeps you from drowning in feelings. Awareness keeps you from being blindsided. Breath keeps you from collapsing into chaos. Purpose keeps you from wasting energy on meaningless battles. A person who holds this system is like someone standing on a mountain looking down at a crowded valley. All the noise continues below, but their mind remains unmoved. Not because they avoid life, but because they rise above it. Here's a truth few people recognize. When you are calm, you no longer win with words, you win with presence. A still presence makes others feel they cannot manipulate you. A grounded presence naturally quiets conflict. A centered presence dissolves in faster than apologies. In a world rushing toward noise, the person who remains calm carries the rarest power of all. The power of an unmoved inner world, and as Musashi proved, when the mind is unshaken, the sword cannot strike. When the mind is unshaken, life cannot break you. When the mind is unshaken, you become unconquerable. In the next part, we will look at truth that most never realize. Many confrontations disappear on their own. If you do not react, power of non-reaction. Most confrontations disappear when you don't participate. There is something Musashi understood deeply, something most people today never realize. Not every confrontation deserves your participation. In fact, most of them simply dissolve on their own if you don't react. In the Book of 5 Rings, Musashi wrote a line that seems simple but contains the truth of a lifetime of combat. Not every strike deserves a counter. He knew the real victor is not the one who swings the sword most, but the one who knows when not to swing it. This principle becomes even more powerful in modern life. A world where conflict constantly seeks you out, not because you're wrong, but because the modern world thrives on provoking you, distracting you, and draining your emotional energy. The more you react, the more you lose. The more you stay silent at the right moment, the stronger you become. Think back to the moments you reacted in anger instantly. What followed? Regret. You wished you had waited by seconds. You wished you had said that. You wished you had made the situation worse. Because when you react immediately, you're not reacting with wisdom. You're reacting with instinct. Most conflicts in daily life, online, at home, at work, on the street, are like small flames. If left alone, they burn out. But one impulsive reply, one sarcastic comment, one wounded ego, and suddenly the small flame becomes a wildfire. Musashi rarely reacted emotionally. He observed. He stayed quiet. He did what his opponent wanted. He studied what his own emotions were trying to push him to do. He acted only when necessary, and when he did act, it struck at the decisive point. That is why he always won. In modern life, this non-reaction becomes almost supernatural. It's not silence out of weakness, silence of control. It's not avoidance. It's refusing to waste energy on what doesn't matter. It's not suppressory. Wise people understand this. Every reaction is a cost of mental energy. The more you react, the more drained your mind becomes. The duller your clarity becomes, the more chaotic your life becomes. Some people create drama not because they are strong, but because they need attention to fill an internal emptiness. If you react, you give them exactly what they want. If you don't react, they run out of fuel. Online arguments, workplace politics, petty conflicts, they all follow the same rule. If you don't add wood, the fire dies out. This is why calm people are intimidating to those who crave chows. You can't drag them into emotional turbulence. You can't provoke them. You can't manipulate them. And because you can't control them, you fear them. Musashi didn't win some duels by reacting. He won by seeing through the conflict. He understood that many confrontations are just noise, not real danger. That's the lesson modern humans need most. A rude comment online, it disappears. A cold remark from a coworker, tomorrow they won't even remember it. A family member having a bad emotional moment, don't react. They'll calm down on their own. An angry driver honking at you, don't react. You'll never see them again. A person trying to create drama, don't react. They'll move on to someone else. Here is a truth all emotionally mature people understand. Most problems in life don't need you to solve them. They just need you not to make them worse. Non-reaction is not weakness. It is the ability to see the whole picture. To know what deserves your energy and what doesn't. To refuse to let emotions pull you into meaningless battles. And ultimately they realize non-reaction is a reaction. But a reaction of wisdom. The right silence is not defeat. It is victory on a higher level. Victory over your anger, over your ego, over your impulses, over the trap of emotional reactivity. In the next part, we will reach the final truth of Musashi's system. The highest level of calm, becoming unmoved even when the world around you is in chaos. That is the summit of this entire journey. Part unshakable mind. The highest level of calm in any confrontation. At this 8th level, we enter the highest essence of Musashi's system, the state he described as the mind like still water, or what we can call the unshakable mind. This is not simply the absence of anger, fear, or impulsiveness. It is something far beyond, the ability to remain centered even when the world around you is in chaos. The unshakable mind does not mean there are no waves. Waves still come. Emotions still rise, events still happen, people still provoke, conflicts still appear. But instead of being thrown into the vortex, you stand at the center of it, watching everything move around you without touching your core. The unshakable mind is when you stand inside the storm, yet the storm cannot move you. From the outside, such a person might seem passive. They don't shout, don't lash out, don't spill emotions everywhere, don't try to win with words. But in reality, they are performing the most difficult act a human being can perform. Holding their entire inner world steady, clear, and untouched. Musashi taught that in every battle, the decisive moment does not belong to the strongest strike, but to the one who remains calm the longest. The one who loses their calm first loses the fight. The one who loses themselves first loses the fight. The one who lets emotions take control first loses the fight. A person with an unshakable mind has a strange kind of power. Their presence alone makes others adjust their behavior. One calm look can dilute another person's aggression. One slow, measured sentence can lower the temperature of an entire argument. One grounded posture can make the angry lose momentum, because calmness operates at a higher frequency than agitation. Agitation exists on a lower level. Calmness exists on a higher one. So when you remain calm, you automatically elevate the energy of the confrontation. And those stuck on the low level cannot pull you down. The unshakable mind is not suppression. It is not fake silence. It is not coldness. It is awareness. Seeing emotions clearly without letting them steer you. The immature react. The mature observe. The wise choose the right reaction. The highest level, the unshakable, need to react because their very presence is enough. Imagine a lake. If the lake is disturbed, every reflection becomes distorted. But when the lake is still, it reflects the world flawlessly. The human mind works the same way. When the mind is disturbed, you misread people, misunderstand situations, and say the wrong things. When the mind is still, you see people accurately, understand events clearly, and speak precisely. The unshakable mind is a state where no internal battles remain. No battle with yourself. No battle with emotions. No battle with past or future. When there is no battle, you finally see truth. When there is no battle, you understand the nature of confrontation. When there is no battle, you act from clarity. This is the level Musashi wanted every warrior to reach. To strike without striking, to win without conflict. An unshakable person does not win by force. They win because they cannot be pulled. They win because they see the essence of every conflict. They win because they control themselves. They win because their clarity cuts deeper than any blade. And above all, they win because they never lose themselves. In modern life, the unshakable mind is a survival skill. When someone attacks you, you don't crumble. When someone praises you, you don't become arrogant. When something unexpected hits, you don't panic. When someone around you is angry, you don't get dragged into their storm. When everyone is arguing, you stay centered. When life pushes you around, you stand like a pillar. This is a strength no school teaches, no university trains. Yet it is the strength that decides whether you can live peacefully in a chaotic world. Musashi called it the state of the one who sees through. Buddhism calls it samadhi, deep concentration. Taoism calls it stillness. Modern psychology calls it inner freedom. But regardless of the name, the essence is the same. A person with an unshakable mind cannot be controlled by life. In the next part, we complete Musashi's entire system with its final transformation, when calmness stops being just a skill for confrontation and becomes a way of living, shaping you into a different kind of human being. Part Chin, when calmness becomes a way of being, Musashi's final transformation. At this final level, we realize that Musashi's entire system, emotional distance, foresight, breathing, non-reaction, and the unshakable mind, all point to one ultimate truth. Calmness is not just a skill, it is a way of being. It stops being something you use when needed and becomes the essence of who you are. Anyone can stay calm for a few minutes. Only those who step onto the way can remain calm throughout their lives. Musashi did not train the sword merely to defeat opponents. He trained to conquer himself. And once he conquered himself, calmness became inseparable from him, like breathing, like heartbeat, like movement. When calmness becomes a way of being, you no longer try to stay calm. You are naturally calm. You no longer force yourself not to react. You simply are not easily provoked anymore. You no longer question whether to act from purpose or emotion. Because purpose becomes the default state behind all your decisions, calmness is no longer a behavior, it becomes an identity. This brings three major transformations. The very transformations modern humans desperately need. First, you become difficult to control. Reactive people are easy to manipulate. One comment can trigger them. One gesture can throw them off balance. One moment of disrespect can derail their entire day. But the calm person is untouchable, not because they lack emotions, but because emotions no longer control them. In a world constantly trying to pull your strings, calmness is freedom. Second, you begin to see the true nature of everything. Anger distorts perception. Sadness clouds judgment. Fear pulls you into the wrong choices. But when the mind is steady, everything becomes clear. You see who is genuine and who isn't. You see what the real problem is and what is only a symptom. You see what deserves protection and what deserves to be let go. This is the wisdom Musashi wanted every human being to reach. Third, you live far lighter than most people. Before calmness, you live in reaction. With calmness, you live in choice. When calmness becomes your nature, you live in freedom. You no longer need to chase your emotions. You no longer need to prove you're right. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to fight for attention or validation. You only need to stay centered, and when you stay centered, you win everything that matters. Musashi said that the greatest victory is the victory without an opponent. He did mean avoiding battle. He meant becoming the kind of person life cannot defeat, because you have no emotional weak points left to attack. When calmness becomes your way of being, you enter that state. Nobody can insult you enough to break you. Nobody can provoke you enough to shake you. Nobody can pull you into meaningless conflict. Nobody can manipulate your mind with anger or fear. You become the person the world cannot pull downward. Because you operate on a higher plane, when you live with this presence, all confrontations change. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You act less, but your actions have more impact. You do not compete, but you still accomplish what you want. You do not get angry, but others still respect you. You do not need to display power, but others still feel your strength. And most importantly, you become someone who brings peace wherever you go. Not a weak peace, but the peace born from an inner strength no one can bend. Everything Musashi left behind wasn't to turn us into ancient warriors, but to help us become masters of the present moment. In a world full of noise, conflict, and emotional turbulence, calmness is not optional. It is what allows us to survive, grow, and stand out. At this level, you no longer apply Musashi's 4 principles. You become emotional distance. You are foresight. You are steady breath. You are purposeful action. And above all, you are the unshakable mind. This is the final transformation. You do not just learn calmness, you live it. And a person who lives this way becomes stronger than any opponent. As we reach the end of this journey, you may realize something important. Musashi never intended to teach us how to become an invincible warrior on the battlefield. What he truly wanted was to show us how to become invincible within our own lives. Not through stress, not through bloodshed, but through one thing alone, an inner state that cannot be shaken. A person who knows how to create distance when needed, who thinks ahead before acting, who braves before reacting, who stands firm even when the world shakes, who remains calm even in the heart of the storm, and who chooses how to live instead of letting emotions choose for them. If you've listened this far, you're already walking that path. The path of quiet discipline, of battles no one sees, of victories only you will ever fully understand. In a world growing louder every day, calm people are rare, steady people are respected, and the ones who cannot be provoked by noise or chows, those are the people others quietly fear. Musashi's goal was it to turn you into a perfect figure. His goal was to help you look at yourself and say, I have mastered my mind, and because of that my life has changed. If this message has touched you, even just a little, remember, this is not the end. This is the beginning of a longer, deeper, stronger journey. A journey toward an unshakable mind. A journey of mastering each breath. A journey of rising above conflict and chows. A journey of becoming the strongest version of yourself. Thank you for staying until the very end. I wish you steadiness, clarity, and constant growth. If you want to continue this journey with life philosophy, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and if any thought came to you during this video, leave a comment below so we can explore it together. See you in the next video, where we will open another door to inner strength, discipline, and timeless wisdom. Life philosophy, where you grow stronger every single day.